Be a pioneer. Don't be afraid of that. All right, man. We need a palate cleanser. You guys know my last episode was on Soleimani, the attacks. We blew him up, bombed him up with a drone. And since then, it's just been a lot going on in the news. So every time I go and search for news, it's just been Trump, Iran, Iraq, Trump, Iran, Iraq, terrorist. And then everything going on with the Democrat Party and Biden, you know what I'm saying? So we need a palate cleanser. I can't keep just talking about death and war, though that's really what's going on right now. Welcome to another episode of Unqualified News with your host, That's me, Mauricio. Appreciate all the support. I've been getting a lot of listeners. Appreciate that. I think you guys have been telling people. Thank you for that. This is my 15th episode. Somehow I was able to find an article from 1991, and it talks about there being colleges before the first established European college here in America, right? So a Mayan college, Aztec, Incan college, that type. We say that there wasn't. We come here and we say they were savages, but they had sprawling cities, giant pyramids, the most advanced societies. We came over and said, nah, these guys are savages. I don't know how they did this. Come on, man. So this article touches on that. This article pretty much touches on the fact that the European culture, I hate saying it like that, but it's just, I think humankind, they're conquerors, right? So they come here and they pretty much destroy everything and they build up their own establishments, right? This reminds me a lot about 2,000 years ago, Alexandria, the library, right? Was it the Romans that burned it down because, science? No, it can't be. Let's burn this bitch down. Remember that? That's the same thing that happened. When Europeans came to North America, they were like, wait a minute, this is almost as nice as our stuff. No, this can't be. We gotta burn it down and gotta build up our own thing. And you'll see this article touches on that. Again, thanks for listening and enjoy the article. Hey, before I forget, this is a commercial for Anchor. Anchor, who hosts my podcast, they help me distribute it to Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, pretty much all the podcasts, wherever you find podcasts, you know what I mean? You can add music, you can edit your clips on your phone or your computer, and all this is free, so that's really good. On the homepage, there's a wallet, and in that wallet shows all the money you've been making from your episodes if you put commercials, you know what I mean? Like this one. You don't have to put commercials, but I decided to put it because I want you guys to hear this. I want you guys to know it's so easy. So download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. All right, this one is from tribalcollegejournal.org. Tribal College, Journal of American Indian Higher Education. And this is an article from August 15, 1991. It looks like it was a printed article, of course, 1991. I don't think people are reading articles on the internet. By Stephen Crum. Colleges before Columbus. Mayans, Aztecs, and Incas offered advanced education long before the arrival of Europeans. An age-old tradition of advanced higher education existed in the lower Western Hemisphere, Mesoamerica and South America, centuries before the arrival of the first Europeans. Various groups of native peoples, commonly referred to as Indians, created advanced schools to perpetuate knowledge as well as native traditions. As will be noted in this article, some scholars, both past and present, have labeled these indigenous educational institutions as colleges and universities. Unfortunately, the Western Hemispheric natives have not been credited for being the first to establish a higher education tradition in the Western Hemisphere. Instead, much of the history had been written by ethnocentric Euro-Americans who gave themselves the credit for introducing advanced schooling in this part of the world. In 1936, for example, one scholar called the Spanish-created College of Santa Cruz de Tlatelolco, established in 1536 near Mexico City, the first college in America. His assertion was reinforced in 1962 by another scholar. In 1936, for example, one scholar called the Spanish-created College of Santa Cruz de Tlatelolco, established in 1536 near Mexico City, the first college in America. His assertion was reinforced in 1962 by another scholar who also wrote that Tlatelolco was the first college in America. These kinds of statements, of course, give the impression that it was the Europeans who brought higher education to the Western Hemisphere. Most educational historians fail to mention that indigenous Mayas, Aztecs, and Incas possessed advanced education well before the Spanish arrival of 1492. The Mayans of Central America were perhaps the first to establish advanced education. Not all is known about the early history of these remarkable people, largely because their golden age existed centuries ago, from 300 AD to about 900 AD. However, solid evidence tells us that the 6th and 7th centuries, the Mayas had created an advanced society. They adopted domesticated agriculture which had existed in Mesoamerica for some time, and grew such staples as corn, beans, and squash. The Mayans built large urban centers such as Copan, Tikal, and Chichen Itza, located in the vicinity of today's Guatemala, Honduras, Belize, and the Yucatan region of southern Mexico. These centers possessed public markets, ball courts, ceremonial centers, temples, and astronomical observatories. The Mayans developed an elaborate hieroglyph written language which is still being studied and analyzed by scholars today. They were also scientists and mathematicians. For this, the Mayans developed an accurate calendar consisting of 365 days a year and also a shorter 260-day calendar for ceremonial purposes. They were perhaps the first in the world to utilize the concept of zero, something that did not become popular in Europe until the 13th century. Because of Mayan accomplishments, scholars of the 20th century have been fascinated by their early history. Historians Michael Mayer and William Sherman write that the Mayans were the premier scientists of ancient America. Sylvanus Griswold Morley writes that the most notable characteristic of Mayan civilization, however, was its achievements in abstract intellectual fields of writing, astronomy, mathematics, and calendrics. For various speculative reasons, including drought, agricultural failures, or maybe invasion, the classic Maya period ended around 900 AD. Thus, we have limited information about some aspects of early Mayan history. However, because of their scientific accomplishments, some scholars maintain that Mayans possessed advanced education. Historian Germain Arciniegas calls Copan the once thriving Mayan urban center, their seat of learning, their university city. Enrique Oltra, who cites Spanish colonial scholar Diego de Landa as his authority, writes that the Mayans had a large house like a college of students of our time. Perhaps the scholars now deciphering the Mayan hieroglyphs might give us more information about the early educational history of the ancient Maya people of Central America. If less is known about the aspects of Mayan history, more is known about the Aztecs or Mexica of central Mexico. For example, they were late arrivals to the Valley of Mexico, arriving in 1253 AD. And establishing their impressive capital Tenochtitlan in 1325. By the 1400s and the early 1500s, the Aztecs possessed an advanced society similar in many aspects to the Mayans. Tenochtitlan was surrounded by more than one suburb, including Tlatelolco. These urban centers had botanical gardens, zoos, ceremonial centers, temples, and other impressive architectural structures. The Aztecs developed their own calendar that integrated religious practices and ceremonies. They also continued the ancient Mesoamerica tradition of agriculture. The Aztec Empire was led by educated administrators, priests, and military leaders. The cultural traditions included hieroglyphic writing, poetry, and other areas of the humanities. In short, a rich lifestyle was flourishing when Spanish conquistador Fernando Cortés entered the Valley of Mexico in 1519. The Aztec Empire established two types of schools. The higher one was called the Calmecac, labeled as the Centro Nahuatl de Educación Superior, Aztec Center of Higher Education, by Mexican scholar Miguel León Portilla. It is, however, misleading to use the singular, for there were at least a dozen or more Calmecacs
located in and around Tenochtitlan. In his study on pre- and post-contact Aztec education, Jose Maria Kobayashi identifies 7 places where indigenous Calmecacs existed: Tliyan, Mexico, Huitznahuac, Tetlanman, Tlamatisco, Yopico, and Tlosmolco. Others also existed in Textuscoco and Tlatelolco. The Aztecs were religious people, and their Calmecacs were dedicated to the deity Quetzalcoatl, the ancient universal god of Mesoamerica. Quetzalcoatl, also called the feathered serpent, was a malevolent and positive force, according to oral tradition and belief. He created humans and gave them their existing culture. He also introduced agriculture and taught people how to produce corn, cotton, pumpkins, and other domesticated crops. Thus, the Calmecacs perpetuated things of the previous Mesoamerican cultures, including the belief of Quetzalcoatl. The Aztec word Calmecac therefore had the figurative meaning of the house that passes down tradition. Since the Calmecacs were the integral part of Aztec religion, the dedicated priests, known for their wisdom, knowledge, and personal talents, were chosen as teachers. Logically, the Calmecacs were located near temples where instruction often took place. The students were taught astronomy, dramatic arts, music, dance, philosophy, religion, poetry, rhetoric, and public speaking, Aztec writing, and the history of the Aztec nation. Because they were required to become future national leaders, high priests, military leaders, and government officials, their education placed heavy emphasis on public speaking, ethical awareness, discipline, and self-control. The training was, therefore, rigorous and intense. They abstained from the youthful social life, were given limited food and sleep, underwent hard physical training, and inflicted self-punishment with the thorns of a maguey plant. Contrary to popular belief, not all students came from leading or wealthy families. Some lower-class individuals also attended the Calmecacs, as they came from dedicated families who placed emphasis upon intense training and discipline. When the Spanish leadership militarily defeated the Aztec Empire in 1521, they destroyed the visible Aztec institutions, including the Calmecacs, and replaced them with Spanish ones. The College of Santa Cruz de Tlatelolco, established in 1536, was the first European-created college of the Western Hemisphere. Was built over the earlier Calmecac of the Aztec suburb Tlatelolco. Before I keep reading, man, these words are some words that I've never seen these letters put together in this fashion. You know what I mean? And I'm sure you guys haven't either. So I'm doing my best. I'm doing my best to read these words. Okay? I'm trying to give the Mayan gods the justice. I will get better at reading these words. I guarantee you. I'm gonna practice. I'm sure in the future I'll have another episode regarding Mayan culture. Since we just found that Mayan palace, I'm sure there's gonna be a lot more excavating going on. Alrighty, onward. However, not all scholars maintain that a native university existed in Cusco before Spanish contact. Roberto MacLean y Esnestos writes that nothing gives me the authority to talk about the existence of a university in the Incan Empire, although there did exist centers of a select culture, education, destined to the imperial aristocracy. They were called the Yashuhuasi. In the doctoral dissertation on the Incan Empire, Sally Jane Wolfe Gordon writes that although universities and writing systems are attributed to a pre-Incan era, such must be assumed to be mythological. The positions taken by these researchers stem from 2 factors. First, some modern-day scholars don't regard the earlier colonial writers, and Fernando Montesinos in particular, as legitimate scholars. Second, they don't believe in the reliability of native oral tradition and maintain that the earlier advanced education, called a university education by some, was only a myth, not a reality. In quoting another scholar, MacLean y Esnestos writes that Montesinos' discussion of a university brought an uproar among other conservative historians. Regardless of the debate, the Yashuhuasi, like the Aztec Calmecacs, was also suppressed by the early Spaniards. However, the Incas and other native people of the Andean region have never forgotten about their earlier tradition of advanced indigenous education. In March 1980, they came together in Cusco, Peru, and sponsored a large conference called Indian Nations and Organizations of South America. One objective was to restore and revive older native traditions, including educational institutions. Thus, one of their recommendations was the need for a World Indian University. Information does not exist on the current status of this proposed university. One hopes that it will be established in the near future. Some persons living in the United States also acknowledged the existence of the advanced education that existed before European contact. John Collier, who served as the Commissioner of the Bureau of Indian Affairs from 1933 to 1945, wrote in 1947 that the first historical Inca, Sinchi Roca, founded at Cusco the Yashuhuasi, intended to become the first national university, and the ninth Inca, Pachacutec, greatly expanded it. In making reference to the Calmecec, Jack D. Forbes, professor of Native American Studies at the University of California, Davis, wrote in 1985 that the ancient Mexicans possessed the Calmecac, an advanced college or university for the education of religious and secular leaders. Forbes and others created DQ University in 1970, a native post-secondary institution that recognizes the earlier Mesoamerican history. A wall-sized painting of the Aztec calendar is located at the entrance of the college's auditorium. In conclusion, advanced indigenous education existed in the Western Hemisphere before the arrival of Europeans. Besides the Mayans, Aztecs, and Incas, other native peoples also perpetuated advanced learning. Robert Rickard writes that ancient Zapotecs of the Oaxacan region of Mexico had a special college where priests were educated. Unfortunately, many historians of today do not acknowledge the existence of the earlier native higher education institutions. Instead, in this article, Las Universidades Hispanas de América y el Indio, the Hispanic Universities of American and Indian, scholar Juan B. Oalechea Labayan gives us the impression that it was the colonial Spanish who started the higher education tradition in the Western Hemisphere. Perhaps he might one day revise his study to include a discussion of the advanced education that existed before 1492. Stephen J. Crum is a postdoctoral fellow at the University of California, Davis.
Hey, what's up? Welcome to another segment of Trump's tweets. At Real Donald Trump. All caps. Here we go. This is how it is. I just got impeached for making a perfect phone call. That's it. All capital letters. That's what he tweeted. About 93,000 comments, 51,000 retweets, and 285,000 loves. I don't know if they're loving the fact that he was impeached, or I'm not sure on that one. There's a lot of haters that follow him. It's just shady how they're doing him. He's just a person like us, but seems like we're all kind of just attacking him. You know how this system is, man. It could have been anybody, but it's him. It could have just been anybody, but it's him. It's not his fault.